You know, you are moderately busy running $2 billion companies that are stretching the boundaries of space and time and energy, and you came to Dublin. What was the attraction of this event this time?
I understand there's really going to be a great party tonight.
This is pretty great.
Yeah, this is the queen.
Have you seen this one?
I saw it earlier today.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Be aware she can move in any direction.
The queen is very powerful.
I like that she's standing perfectly in that black square.
Yeah.
And it makes you think she's gonna just only step into squares, like almost like Qbert.
She's with a bishop.
Oh, she's with a bishop.
Yes. And the bishop.
So this is like a game of chess.
Yes.
Essentially. And notice he's also on a black square.
Yes. A queen and a bishop.
Have you considered overnight Elon Musk getting into the candy business as he suggested he might do on Twitter?
I didn't hear that. It sounds like wiseassery. I can't criticize anybody else for wiseassery.
The new Crew Dragon design is be able to land propulsively with precision, which I think is kind of the next generation. Like if you consider the first generation was parachutes to a water landing, then arguably sort of wings and gear, landing legs, landing gear. Then like the sort of third generation is propulsive landing with precision. I mean, if you saw a movie about the future with aliens landing, how do they land? Like that. Okay, obviously. They don't like, I mean, it'd be kind of weird if the aliens landed in the ocean with parachutes and be like, okay, nothing to fear.
There's competitors now ramping up, and as you're familiar with BYD, which is also on the West Coast, I think they're ramping up production of their electric vehicles. Warren Buffett owns 10% stake in that. Why do you laugh? BYD is trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen their car?
Previously, when people have tried to make a reusable system, they found that they would get some portion of the way and then conclude that success was not one of the possible outcomes. In government programs, of course, the program would still continue for quite some time.
The ultimate goal of SpaceX is to develop the technologies that can take humanity to Mars.
Would you want to be on that flight?
I'd like to go to Mars, absolutely. I think it would be great to be born on Earth and die on Mars, hopefully not at the point of impact.
You know, in my case, when I was 10 years old, my father was incarcerated. He had threatened someone with a gun. In Switzerland, it's a very bad idea to threaten a banker with a gun. Mm-hmm. And he had a drug in his system, a sleep drug, which was found then later on to create quite a few side effects, including extreme violence. And his case was reopened. He was the first person to be pardoned by the cantonal parliament in Geneva. And at the time I thought, you know, he got away with it. He had a very good attorney. Ironically, 15 years later, I'm doing a PhD on sleep. I challenged one of my professors. I said, you know, what if I use this particular drug, for example, in mice? And he said, Philip, you can't use this. It makes people psychotic and aggressive. So once I had heard this 15 years later, I thought, okay, this is perhaps my father was not as, you know, or was not guilty at all. So it was interesting. My first reaction was to pick up the phone and apologize 15 years later to my father that, you know, I had doubted his innocence.
I thought you were just bullshitting.
Exactly.
Any natural resource extraction on Mars would be, the output would be for Mars. Like, it definitely wouldn't make sense to transport stuff 200 million miles back to Earth. You know, honestly, like if you had like crack cocaine on Mars, like in pre-packaged, you know, pallets, it still wouldn't make sense to transport it back here. Maybe good times for the Martians, but not back here.
Your former employees, which I thought really summed up a lot of what you have achieved. He said, he is Werner Braun Braun, Howard Hughes, Henry Ford, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and every other badass rolled into one.
Yeah, that's probably a bit generous.
Because I had this like existential crisis when I was a kid, and tried to figure out what's it all about, and none of the books I read seemed to actually have a good answer. You know, so I read all the religious texts, and I read a bunch of philosophy books, and they're all quite depressing, particularly the Germans.
Every data point, Rod, that we look at internally suggests that we are best in class, but we don't.
Best, which is not a class.
Yes, we're the best. Sorry.
Best in a class of one.
Everyone in this room is inspired by you. Who are you inspired by?
Well, Kanye West, obviously.
That's what you said. Crazy car to have as a daily driver, particularly on the 405.
So, but I understand when you got it.
Yeah.
You're driving down 280, and you wrecked it.
No, well.
And you. Let me just tell the story, and then you can correct
all
it, because the story's great, and I hope it's
yeah.
true.
Let's see if the story that you tell is actually how that compares to the reality, because the reality is pretty messed up.
So, hopefully the reality's better. So you wreck the car. You get out of the car. You're doubling over with laughter, and the person with you said, "Why are you laughing that you just wrecked this car?" And you said, "No, you don't know the funny part. It wasn't insured."
Well, the punchline's correct. I'm probably number one on the list of famous last words. I said, "Watch this." Yeah, watch this. That could be awkward with a rocket launch.
Is there a parallel with how you build companies in that story?
I hope not.
Let's see what this thing can do.
Yeah, watch this. That could be awkward with a rocket launch.
How do you plan a business where you know, the rocket business, you know some of these things are going to blow up on the launch pad? How does the business plan work?
I don't really have a business plan.
The plane thing is not a good idea in my view. The plane, and the reason I think is, like, intuitively it seems like a plane should work, but actually if you consider that really every mode of transport has a design that is appropriate to its medium. And if you're in space, wings are not very useful because there's no air. And then if you want to go somewhere other than Earth, there's also no runways. So these are important considerations.
Going back to Mars, what kind of government do you envision for the first Martian colony?
We have to be careful
and what's your title?
Yeah, exactly. Emperor or God Emperor? I don't know. It might be too much. I don't know. You have to watch my jokes here. Not everyone gets irony. You know, must remember.
What would be your mediocre superpower? Now, this is absurd to ask you because Tony Stark is partially modeled after you. Right. So you actually are sort of have real. So we were going to ask you to downgrade.
He doesn't technically have a superpower. I guess, except like inventing technology or something.
Right. So we're sort of asking you to downgrade from that a bit. So an example of a mediocre superpower would be one of the best ones we've ever gotten is this guy who wished to temporarily detach his arm while spooning with a girl. Sometimes it's staying.
That's what he wants to do with a girl?
That's awesome.
But how? I mean, on a regular day for you, are you sleeping? You're not sleeping a lot, right?
Well, geez, do I look that bad?
No.
Actually met a woman I dated briefly in college. Who now works at Scientific American as a writer, and she related the anecdote that we went on a date. All I was talking about was electric cars. That was not a winning conversation.
So it was a bit of a monologue, was it?
Yeah, she said she said the first question I asked her was, "Do you ever think about electric cars?" She said, "No." She never does.
So you learn from that. That wasn't the best shout-out line.
Wasn't great. But it has recently it's been more effective.
There you go. I know this man.
I remember when you first told me that you were thinking about tunnels,
When did I first tell you about that?
Years ago.
Okay, it's like a long time ago.
Yeah,
like,
I thought you were joking.
Yeah, it was. I was joking, but. And we're funding the company for merchandise sales. So thank you for anyone who's bought our flamethrower. You will not be sorry, or maybe you will. It won't be boring.
And he's a designer, so he's good at sort of the styling of the cars, but he thinks it's all about styling, and it's not. You know, it's really, this is, you know, the reason we don't have electric cars is not for lack of styling.
Right.
We were first talking about the concept. You know, tunnels feel like a resolutely old school solution to a problem.
I'm sad that I invented tunnels.
Are you now like, fuck no, I am not starting another company? Or are you still thinking that?
Yes, that's how I feel. That is.
That picture at the end is a picture of one of the circuit boards inside the Roadster, right?
We try to confuse the aliens as much as possible.
Here we are on top of our giant ball of liquid oxygen. They say SpaceX has big balls, and it's true.
You're obviously a very competitive person. You're competing with the likes of Jeff Bezos in...
Jeff who?
Actually, you know what's great is the Lego movie. I really like the Lego movie. It's really great.
Okay, I know what the headline tomorrow's now going to be.
Everything is awesome.
小学生でも笑わない熊田のみんな笑うバカウケレジェンドさすがです
Our own U.S. Air Force is funding the Russians to compete against us. It's super messed up. I mean, what the, you know.
The Model X is now over 2 years late. What went wrong?
Well, I do have an issue with punctuality, I have to admit. You'd have this great shot of green plants on a red background, and I thought, okay, maybe that would get
the money shot. You got to beam
that would be the money
that
shot, yeah. I'm never quite sure whether that's a sort of a word you can use or not.
Your friend asked me at a party, hey, what are you going to call a third generation car? I was like, well, we've got the S and the X, we might as well make it the E, you know. And then it kind of stuck, even though we're just kidding. And then just to sort of add to it, we also just for laughs trademarked the Model Y. But I guess things are pretty dry in the trademark world, so nobody picked up on that. And anyway, then Ford gave us a call and said they were going to sue us for using Model E. And we're like, okay, like Ford's killing sex. I mean, that's terrible.
We went on a date. All I was talking about was electric cars. That was not a winning conversation.
So it was a bit of a monologue, was it?
Yeah, she said she said the first question I asked her was, "Do you ever think about electric cars?" She said, no, she never does.
So you learn from that. That wasn't the best shut-up line.
Wasn't great. But it has recently it's been more effective.